And we welcome you back to the Fighting Saints Report. Jack Milewski, Jim Leitner going around the USHL. We'll break down the standings. We'll break down upcoming matchups. But the first topic that we have to start on is the battle for 6th seed in the Western Conference. Right now, it's between Sioux City, who has 52 games played and 55 points, and Omaha, who's made a tremendous launch back into the standings just to be relevant at this point in the season is pretty impressive. But they have a legit shot at the playoffs. 53 games played, 54 points remaining, and we just looked at the schedule for these two teams remaining the rest of the season on the break, and I'll tell you what, on paper, Omaha should make the playoffs because Sioux City has the toughest schedule remaining of any team in the USHL. I don't even have to look at the rest of the schedules to let you know that they have the toughest schedule remaining.
Yeah, what is it, 3 games against Tri-City?
3 against Tri-City, 3 against Sioux Falls, Waterloo, Fargo 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
Forget about it.
Exactly, and they play Omaha too, and Omaha's been playing good hockey as well. Omaha's 6-3-1 its last 10, whereas Sioux City is 3-7-0 the last 10. Although I was a huge Sioux City fan this weekend.
When they're playing against
When they're playing
Illinois,
Central Illinois and they got a couple of overtime wins, I was huge
win.
fans. But I agree with you. You're just looking at the schedule. Omaha on paper really has the advantage, even though they have one fewer game or I guess Sioux City has a game in hand. Mm-hmm. But when you look at Omaha playing bottom feeder Lincoln a couple times,
Green Bay twice,
Green Bay, Madison, those are games that are a lot more winnable than the schedule that Sioux City has had. And I got a chance to watch Sioux City yesterday when they were playing their afternoon game in Central Illinois, and other than Bobby Brink and Martin Pospisil, they really need more depth and more help, and I don't think they have that kind of depth to really overcome the teams that they're going to play down the stretch. Whereas Omaha, it just seems like they're a little bit deeper team. They may not have that high end talent at the top, but they're a deeper team, and they've been playing much better hockey since maybe the last month or 6 weeks, and they've really earned their way to get in.
It's really since Akira Schmidt has joined the team, they've been completely different, and they've structured their game plan around him. They really clamped down 5 tight around the net, and from talking to people, all they try to do is they sky the puck out of the zone, and they send 2 forwards after it to chase it down, and they try to make really uncomfortable plays for the defense. It's a really interesting style of play, but it's worked for them. The way they play, or the way they've started to play, kind of reminds me of CR, and it's different styles, but when the whole team can just buy into the philosophy completely, and that's when CR really started to turn it around, it seems, when they bought into just clamping down defensively and being opportunistic, kind of like Omaha is doing in a completely different way, an unorthodox way. That's when they start to win, and they've really made a big run. And yeah, like you said, it's tough to see Omaha. I mean, on paper, and that's why you play the games, because you can't decide it on paper. But it's tough to see Omaha not doing at least well enough to get past Sioux City. Sioux City realistically could only win 2 games the rest of the way because of how many good teams they're playing, and those teams all have something to play for. Still, maybe Tri-City by the end of the season will have the Anderson Cup locked up in the last couple weeks, but for the time being, when they face them this upcoming weekend, they'll still have something to play for. That's an interesting race to keep your eye on.
It's probably the best race in the USHL right now, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, you can look at 2 and 3 in the Western Conference. The battle for a first-round bye in the West with Waterloo and Sioux Falls, they are tied with points. They are tied for games played. They're tied in winning percentage. They're tied in goals for. Should I go on? I mean, they are.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. Yeah, it's pretty neat.
They're both 6-3. Well, sorry, Waterloo is 6-3, 1-0. Sioux Falls is 6-1, 2-1 in their past 10, so almost identical there. But, yeah, those two teams are very, very even. That'll be interesting to see who gets a first-round bye. And then I'm really interested to see who gets the first-round bye in the Eastern Conference. Now, it looked like Chicago was running away with it. Youngstown's actually locked up a playoff spot. They become the 3rd team to do so. They're in 2nd place with 1 point, but Chicago and CR both have 1 game in hand on them, and I think that's another race that might come down to the very last day.
Yeah, and I think I kind of like that Omaha-Sioux City race a little bit more, just because Omaha really had to come from the depths to even get back into contention, and I don't know if people around the league are kind of rooting for Omaha because they were so far buried and now they're back in the hunt, or if you're a Sioux City fan and you're watching your team kind of struggle down the stretch or what. But there are some really good races. You're exactly right about that. But I think that's kind of the one that I like the most, or the one that I'm kind of most interested in because like I said, I think Omaha was really buried and they didn't have much of a chance. And I think a lot of people thought that they were making deals around the deadline to kind of sell or kind of plan for the following season. But it actually turned out to work in their benefit, and they're on a roll right now. So, but again, there's some really good ones in the East. Chicago Cedar Rapids tied for third with 64 points. I think Team USA, it's going to be interesting to see how high they can climb. I've heard some people think that they could get as high as number 2. That might be a little bit of a stretch, but it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun these last 4 weeks of the season to see how this all shakes out.
Looking at a couple matchups this week that if you're not the Fighting Saints, obviously not looking at their matchups, but other ones that will have an impact on where they could sit in the standings. It actually starts on Tuesday, even before the Fighting Saints play. Chicago visits Green Bay, and Chicago had a 4-game losing streak before they beat Dubuque on Saturday night, and now they have a chance to build off the Dubuque win going into Green Bay, the team that has struggled the most in the last couple months in the Eastern Conference, even more so than Madison. They've traded almost all their big-time players away, and they're really just mailing it in for next season. That's a game that Chicago absolutely has to have at the top of the standings in the Eastern Conference. Then they'll play them again on Friday night, so 2 winnable games for the Chicago Steel this weekend. And then looking on Friday as well, Waterloo and CR have a 2-game series this weekend. Those have Cowbell Cup implications, but also even though Waterloo's not in the Eastern Conference, if CR can grab another one from the Blackhawks, they played them tough all season long. They'll shoot up in the standings. And then Youngstown only has 1 game this weekend, and it's on Friday, but it's at Muskegon, and that's a game that if you're the Fighting Saints, you absolutely root for Muskegon because they're too far ahead of everyone to really track down. But if Youngstown can come back to the pack a little bit and come closer to the Fighting Saints, then they might have a chance to, and again, mathematically it's tough, but right now you're rooting for Muskegon and then basically everyone between Muskegon and you to lose the rest of the way.
Yeah, and I think another big matchup this weekend is going to be, I believe Central Illinois goes to Fargo
twice
for 2 games. That's going to be a huge implication for that race for the last playoff spot in the East. And like you said, I think Dubuque is in a nice spot right now, or a comfortable enough spot where Central Illinois is going to have to go on a crazy run, and the Saints are really going to have to struggle down the stretch. But I think that could be a huge matchup for the Saints too, to see if Central Illinois goes to Fargo and doesn't come back with any points. That could actually be, really the end of their legitimate playoff hopes. So that's going to be a big one, too. I mean, the Saints will be scoreboard watching there, too.
Yeah, and the U18s, the last matchup that we haven't mentioned is the U18s play twice against Des Moines. And when you talk about Team USA climbing as high as second, if they're going to do that, the U18s have 5 USHL games remaining, all of them played here at the end of March. If they're going to climb as high as second, realistically, U18s have to win all of their remaining games, and the U17s have to win a couple of their remaining 5 remaining games as well. But he just put up 25 goals in 2 games. I like their chances against anyone. I mean, Des Moines playing well, don't get me wrong, and they're a better caliber team than what Team USA saw against Green Bay. But that offense is still lethal enough to put up 10-plus against anyone.
Yeah, and, I think they've had a couple 6-goal periods, which is, probably better than most teams have had in an entire game throughout the whole season. So Team USA is going to be that's going to be a wild card there too. Like you said, I think the 18s are going to be favored in every game they play. They should be. It'd be a surprise if they weren't. And they're a team they're not going to play in the playoffs because in April they'll be going to the World Under-18 Championships. But their focus right now is to be getting in a position where they're humming along for the World Championships. And they're going to want to be playing their best hockey when they go to that. So they still have a ton to play for. Granted, they're not going to be in the USHL playoffs, and they'd be doing it to improve the position of the 17s. But they still have a lot to play for, and I think there's no question that they're going to be the number one seed, or probably the favorite in the World Championships, and they're going to want to play very good hockey going in. And I think they're going to be making sure that they're in peak physical position to succeed at that tournament. And what better way to do that than to have success in the USHL?
So scoreboard watching, whether the Fighting Saints as a team are doing it, they really just have to take care of their own business, and I think that's what the coaching staff has them focused on. But we have the ability to scoreboard watch a lot more, and it's what you're going to be doing. Again, we've tried to work out some scenarios here. Mathematically, it seems unlikely that Dubuque is able to get a first round bye just because of how many points they would have to make up and against the teams that they play. But stranger things have happened. It's been a wacky season, and we didn't think Omaha could get back in the playoff race. We didn't think Chicago was going to drop out of the 2 spot. Now Youngstown is there and has locked up a playoff spot before the Steel. So if the Fighting Saints, I think what you said is key, get back to just playing the style of hockey the best style of hockey you can possibly play heading into the tournament, and then whatever happens there happens. You can't really worry about the seeding so much now. Just make sure you make the playoffs and then go from there.
Yeah, I think a lot of times you get wrapped up in where you're seated, or you don't like the way you're seated or whatever. But you really have to focus on the way you're playing and putting yourself in a position to win every night. We've seen that in the past several years, really, where, particularly like all the 1-goal games that the Saints played last year, like 30-some 1-goal games. That was something that really positioned them well for the playoffs when it's a tight checking game and it's a difficult scenario and there's a lot of adversity within a game. All those 1-goal games really prepared them, for playing Green Bay in the first round last year, and they beat them. So I think a lot of, it's a similar situation now. You want to be best positioned to have success in the playoffs, and I think in this case it's playing good hockey, it's playing your style, and being really good at your style, and being better at your style than the other team is at their style. So it's going to be an interesting last month of the season, and hopefully the Fighting Saints can maybe get a little help from some affiliates, get on a nice little run and build on that momentum going into the playoffs.
Ryder Donovan up with the team now, and he will be likely for the rest of the season and whatever the playoffs hold for the Fighting Saints. Ryan Beck's already been up with the team and has contributed some minutes on the bottom 6, and Braden Doyle, I believe, is back with the team just for this week. He's going to then finish up his schooling for the rest of the year, but able to maybe contribute in a big 3-game weekend for the Fighting Saints in a small burst there on the blue line. Well, the Fighting Saints have their work cut out for them against Tri-City. Everyone does that faces the Tri-City Storm, quite honestly. But before that, again, Madison on Wednesday has to be the focus for the team in the next couple days, and we'll scoreboard watch for everyone in the locker room so that they don't have to here on the Fighting Saints Report. When we come back, we'll do another Mount Rushmore. This time we're looking at the most underrated players in the NHL, maybe the ones that don't get as much limelight as they deserve. Final segment coming up here on the Fighting Saints Report.